Thank you all for joining our panel discussion, Unlocking Innovative Fiber Deployment Strategies with Dura-Line. Here to speak today from Dura-Line, their Territory Sales Manager, Ron Reed, their Director of Business Development, Paul Dickinson. Representing from Winncom Technologies, our Fiber Product Manager, Alex Cernick. If anyone has any additional questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to add them into the chat and they'll be addressed at the end of the panel discussion. Alex, you're up.
Thank you very much. Dawn, as always, fantastic introduction. And for those of you who have joined, thank you again for your time. We've got a fantastic panel discussion for you today. On the line with us is our partner, Dura-Line. You're going to hear a lot of great things about their products. As Dawn mentioned, if you have any questions, drop them into the chat and we'll address that at the end of the panel discussion. So to kind of set the stage here of what to expect, we're going to talk about Dura-Line and how they're able to future-proof fiber deployments. We'll talk a little bit about what that will look like from a BEAD perspective, since they are BABA certified. Their product lines will feature MicroTrenching and alternative deployment methods. We'll talk about their FuturePath product lines, their MicroDucts, and their scalable fiber network products. We'll talk about a little bit about regulatory and compliance, cost-efficient considerations, and then we'll bring this full circle talking about Winncom and Dura-Line's partnering and how we can ultimately help you on your path to success. Now, again, a lot of this is going to be BEAD-centric since they are BABA certified. And again, that is a product built in the United States, 55% of components being derived from here. But in addition to this, they are a fantastic partner for any fiber solution. So if you are looking to build out a fiber network, reach out. Our contact information will be listed at the end of this presentation, and let us know how we can help you with your current or future deployments. So to kind of start this off, we're going to hit the ball in their court. Paul, if I could ask just a kind of a quick question to start this. I mentioned the BEAD program. So with the BEAD program accelerating so quickly and our customers looking to concentrate on broadband expansions, what are some key deployment challenges you've seen that service providers are facing today?
So thanks very much for having me on this panel. Looking forward to the discussion, Alex and team. Quick question, but a complicated answer. So we've all been waiting to build out the US. In fact, I remember back in 2001, when fiber to the home was just a thought in somebody's mind, and a wireless technology right behind that, right? So finally, we're in a position with BEAD funding, with the prior administration advocating it tremendously to move forward. But there's still a lot of challenges, and the challenges are, I'll get to the most current one last. But the first challenge, I think, would be the challenge everybody had on making the ROI happen and making the deployment happen. So BEAD, of course, helps that. BEAD through state applications and individual users and practitioners like yourself are getting the support they need to roll out broadband that everyone needs. And right behind that BEAD program, of course, is private investment money, which is going to continue for some time. So we're right at the cusp, so to speak, of rolling this out. Now, the very first thing that I think everyone's aware of, above and beyond justifying the deployments, through either high pass rates or rural pass rates, are permitting issues. And permitting issues have two different faces to them. There's the statewide permitting issues and the coordination and the logistics where people need to speak with each other and put together offices in place that weren't in place prior, have the coordination. And we've heard stories, and I'm sure you've heard them yourself, of those delays getting the permits in place could take 1 or 2 years or thereabouts to make that happen. Now, on top of that, at a federal level, when people cross state lines and they need to get other types of assurances, you have environmental stipulations and other types of clearances, which can take even longer. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is labor. I mean, I'm back in the day, and we did it to ourselves in the US. We didn't encourage as many people potentially to go into trades as we should have. And so now we have a situation with a tremendous amount of build out going forward, not just for Broadcom, but right behind that, utility infrastructure and other types of infrastructure where we're trade limited in terms of what's going out there. Dura-Line has taken an active role in that and I think it's been at least 2 or 3 years now, we rolled out a Dura-Line Academy training program where people, and hopefully Winncom is taking advantage of that. And if you're not, then anyone watching this is welcome to either officially through you or on their own, sign up for Dura-Line Academy and take training courses. But we're doing an active role ourselves in trying to encourage people to become not only knowledgeable in the skill of deploying networks, but actually to go into the profession of moving forward and helping out with the construction of Broadcom networks. Now, that takes me to the present. So with the administration change, we've seen a lot of interesting activity going on in the press. And one of the things has been a questioning of where we are with the current BEAD program that was promoted by the prior administration. So what I've been seeing out in the industry right now and in talking to the Fiber Broadband Association and other organizations has been that people are evaluating and looking at how to potentially eliminate hurdles that have maybe slowed us down. Some of those hurdles I already mentioned. Some of those are permitting. Some of those are, well, labor shortage is one I think we're going to have going forward. But what we have right now is a situation where maybe temporarily the BEAD is going to be a slightly slowed down, and then right after that, hopefully it'll be accelerated by moving more quickly through the permitting and other applications. So that'll be the gist of it. I don't know if Ron has any other applications or knowledge of BEAD, but we're very excited about the BEAD rollout. You know, we're very excited to be compliant, and we anticipate nothing but good things over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of deployment.
No, that's amazing. And if I could just point out 2 quick things that I want to concentrate on that you said. So your product is BABA certified, and I mentioned the very beginning of this that it's being manufactured in the United States. 55% of the components are being derived from here, so you do meet that BABA requirement certification, which is not only important for BEAD, but if you're looking at other government vehicles, RDOF, connectivity funds, tribal connectivity. So again, you are eligible for all those vehicles. But you also mentioned something that we're seeing a lot here at Winncom. Customers might not be applying to BEAD, but they're using the BSLs, those broadband serviceable locations, for unserved, underserved. And these are residential, these are commercial customers, but they're using that identification to be able to spur off their existing networks, and they're doing that with private equity funding. So if you fall in any of those 2 camps, please engage us, and we can certainly help to put together, either from pre-engineering perspective, high-level, low-level designs, or putting together a comprehensive bill of materials. So Ron, let me put a ball in your court. So from a product perspective, how does the conduit selection process contribute to long-term fiber network scalability?
Yeah, so when you're installing a pathway, there's a lot of cost in that. First, you got to design and engineer that. There's a lot of cost in that. Then you have the permitting. Now you have more cost and time, and then you're going to install the actual pathway, which is where most of the cost is. So installing a pathway, there's a lot of cost to that. So what we like to say is dig once. Install multiple pathways. What that'll do is that's going to give you a flexible and scalable network. So now you have your pathways that you need today, and also pathways for the future. So you have the flexibility to add fiber right away, excuse me. And also as your network grows, you can scale with it more efficiently and cost effective. The other thing is that when you're installing your pathways, or all those pathways, make sure they have the capacity for the fiber, not only that you use today, but also potentially in the future. So let's say a customer is using a 144 fiber today, and what we see a lot is, in 2 to 3 years, now they need a 288 or maybe even a 432 strand fiber. So when you're installing that fiber or that pathway, make sure it has a capacity to fit, maybe that 144, but also that 288. Otherwise, you got to go back, put in a whole other pathway. If you install it up front, you're able to have those higher strand count fibers and install them right away. The other thing is, and I know we're going to talk about the drop, here in a couple questions for now. But I wanted to add one thing about that. And so when you're installing your drop, maybe today you're using a round drop, and for those that might not know what that is, it's just a round fiber cable for the drop. And then maybe 2 years from now, you go to a flat drop. And what a flat drop is, it's just a flat fiber cable. Looks like the rabbit ears on the antennas we used to watch TV on, and I know I'm not the only one on here that had to watch TV like that, right? So, if you have a pathway that you have either in stock when you're going to install your drop, or you already have your drop pathway installed, and 2 years from now you decide to go to a flat drop cable because maybe the cost went down, maybe lead time or whatever that may be, that pathway may not fit the flat drop cable. So now you got to go and buy new conduit, more cost, whereas you installed the right pathway that can has the capacity for both. Then you can install that cable right away, and you basically future-proofed your network. So that's something that we can help you with and give you those options.
I think that's a great point. So I guess my takeaway is consultation is absolutely imperative to make sure that one of two things, right? That you're putting together a big enough pathway, that way you can scale to support future expansion. And then if there's a revenue recognition aspect to this, having additional pathways that you could lease out to potential customers. So no, I think both of those points are absolutely very valid. So Paul, from your end, what impact do high quality conduit solutions have on fiber's longevity and overall maintenance costs?
Sure. So I'll date myself here too, Ron. I watched The Graduate one too many times when I was young. So my background is actually in material science. So I'm a plastics guy initially before I became an optical guy and other guys down the road. So you can start by talking about the materials, and you can start by talking about the quality of the conduit itself, independent of the design. I'll get to the design in a minute. But the quality of the materials, typically optical fiber and cable is designed to go into the ground for 30, 40, 50 years or more. I mean, the glass itself, we know there has no expected finite lifetime. And, that's why we are still using optical fiber from a long time ago, even if it has maybe some gulp issues or other types of technical issues early in the day. But you want your conduit to last at least as long as a protective barrier to the fiber cables that are going in them. So we start by really using our scientific knowledge in our supply chain to make sure that we use the highest quality resins. We'll start with that. And then we also use the highest quality liners to make it slicker and easier to install. So let's go with that. The other thing is, and Ron probably knows some of these details more than I can't quote them, but our specsmanship regarding the circularity and other very critical parameters that enable the conduit to stand out amongst its peers are second to none. That's a critical aspect also. And so now you have a quality product that's going in the ground. But then above and beyond that, just maintenance costs. I mean, the whole purpose of a conduit is to enable you to have not just the scalability and flexibility of microconduit, but enable you to have a protective, crush-proof barrier around your optical fiber and cable. It wasn't that long ago, and we're still talking to people in the industry now where they felt that they needed to have steel armor around cables to protect it. I can't quote the numbers, but I know that the crush resistance of a Dura-Line conduit around the optical fiber cables enables that cable, especially a micro cable, to be built in a more cost-effective and smaller manner. So you got the protective barrier of the cable itself. Now, if something is going to get cut, there's a statistic with the Common Ground Alliance that $30 or $50 billion a year of stuff gets cut by people rushing to put in infrastructure, whether it's telecom hitting gas and electric lines or vice versa. And we all know that the mapping and the as-builts under the ground are pretty poor. So having a situation where it's pretty easy just by connectorizing a conduit were it to be cut and then jetting in a new fiber cable can increase your uptime and decrease your downtime tremendously as compared to having to go back and, God forbid you hit an 864 several thousand fiber count cable, and now you got somebody in the field that's got to splice it. At least you have another choice. You have another choice to to replace the cable in a cost-effective manner without digging up the ground. So those are the ones that come off the top of my head as significant impacts based on the quality of the initial product and the whole concept of putting fiber cable and conduit.
No, that's great points. So Ron, would you say it's essential to have a dedicated pathway for a drop?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, even though I'm a little biased because I do work for a manufacturer that provides pathways.
It's weird how that works, right?
But let me back that up and kind of say why that is. When you have a pathway that's for that drop, every neighborhood you're in, people are in the spring and it's getting ready to be that time, are going to they're constantly putting in new shrubs and drainage ditches and trees and things like that. They're constantly digging around the yard. They might know where the gas line or electrical is, but they don't really know they don't even know what's connecting their internet, most people, So when you have that pathway there, and I always say use an orange or a blue, something that, is easily to see. So if you just direct bury that fiber cable, one shovel hit and that's going to be cut. And now you're going to roll 2 trucks out there to replace that. Whereas if you have a pathway in place, you're going to have, 1 hit, maybe even 2, and you're going to ding up the pathway. The fiber will still be in place. And more than likely that person will say, hey, something's there. And, maybe move that shrub over a little bit. So the other thing is let's say that they do cut through it. They just keep going and they cut through it, cuts the fiber. It's still going to be a lot less expensive to go out there. You're going to have to still roll a truck, but you don't have to roll 2 trucks. When you have a direct buried fiber, you got to roll a truck, pull the fiber, install it, splice it, and then another week or 2 later, you roll another truck and have them bury it. So you have those costs there. Whereas when you have the pathway in place, you're going to basically just dig down to where that cut was. And I'm going to kind of show you a little bit here, so kind of a visual, but we'll go over these microducts and what they are here in a minute. But you basically would cut down there, have one of these extra pathways, and then we have these couplers that look like this. And they're like shark bites in there, and all they do is just push on. And then you do the other one like that. So you'd splice that on like that, put a splice kit that we have around that, or a lot of people just put like a 1 inch or 1.25 inch conduit over it, tape it up, and then bury it. This is waterproof. You could actually really direct bury this, but we recommend putting something around it. And then you dig that up, and then all you got to do is push your fiber cable back in, and then you're hooked back up. So it's just a lot less expensive.
Nice. So I know, like most of our members online, when I attend these and I'm in the listening seat, I'll usually jump on the vendor's website and kind of go through some of the products, some of the applications. So if someone went on your website, they're going to see a lot about MicroTrenching. Can you talk a little bit about that? What is MicroTrenching, and can you highlight some of the key benefits?
Yeah. So what we're going to do really on the MicroTrenching here is just give you really a high level, just really a highlight of it, because quite honestly, it's not really for everybody. And we thought it would be, something that would be at least of interest for a lot of you just to be aware of, quite honestly. In my old role, I was our product line expert for the micro solution, and I would go out, do presentations and educate customers on micro technology. I was on a plane once a week. I loved it. And, so I've been with Dura-Line over 4 years, 18 years in the industry. And, my first year and a half, I most of the time never mentioned MicroTrenching when I was doing those presentations, and maybe a little bit because no one was really doing it, or there was just it was just limited. So I didn't want to waste people's time, kind of talking about it. But then the last 2 years, it's really blown up. I mean, it is everywhere, and a lot of people are doing it. I see a lot of different specs. A lot of DOTs are having at least part of their spec. So it's really grown, and so we thought it'd be good just to give you kind of a highlight of what it is. And so the slide he has there is our FuturePath Flex, and that's just a parallel configuration with multiple pathways. So you can do that, or you can use single conduits, MicroDucts. We'll explain those in a minute. as well. So if you want to hit the next slide, Alex, and I'll kind of explain what MicroTrenching is and what it is. It's an installation, saw cutting installation in the concrete in the streets. So you'll see there in the picture, you've got really like a tractor up front with a big tank on it, and then you got a vacuum that goes to the tractor behind it. And then you can see in the picture there to the right, the saw and the blade. And what it does is it cuts down anywhere from 16 to 24 inches. And as it's cutting, it's going to suck all that debris and into that tank, into that front tractor. And then you can't see in the picture here, but behind them, you're going to have a crew with the reel of singles or that FuturePath Flex, that parallel that we showed. And then it's going to go, down in that road, which is about 2 inches wide or so. And then what they do is they fill that up with sand and then concrete, and there's a special resin that they put on top. And then what that does is it brings that road back to its pre-existing condition. So that's really what that is. If you want to hit the next slide, Alex. And this just kind of gives you, a little bit of just some pictures, to kind of see what we're kind of talking, just a visual of it really. And you kind of there on the right, you'll see, how you're going to go over the grade or under the grade of that concrete on the highway. And then kind of the sand and concrete and then the resin on top.
I'll add a little bit to that, Ron. When you finish, I'll add a little to that also. In terms of,
go ahead and
add. Mike, as Ron said, MicroTrenching is taking off now, and it's because it's a speedier installation. It's more cost effective. It's less disruptive. It doesn't bust up your whole street when you're putting in it. But the other thing is, early days with MicroTrenching, my understanding is they were going through a bit of a learning curve. Some folks were actually not burying it deep enough. They were doing like 4 or 6 inches or thereabouts. And also, it's very important that the resin being used bond permanently with the road, so that when you have water ingress and you have freezing and thawing and things like that, you don't have the product coming up through the road again. So there was a learning curve, but I think we're past that learning curve now in almost all environments. Ron would know more than I, but that's why it's really now become a very popular way to install.
Nice. And I guess with the increased depth, if that road becomes resurfaced a few years down the road, there's no impact at all.
Right, it's going to be below that grade.
Nice.
So we had a guy actually that only does MicroTrenching. He came and spoke. He's a customer out west that came and spoke at our national sales meeting a couple of years ago, and he does for Google all over the U.S., mostly out west. But he said he's had their maintenance contract since 2019, and this was 2023. So he said he hasn't had one call, for that 4 or 5 years. So I thought that stood out to me.
Yeah, no, that's a good case study there. So if we kind of move away from MicroTrenching for a second, and we look at future pathways, MicroDucts, how do they differ from traditional conduit systems?
Sorry, I muted myself on accident. If you can go down a slide or two, let's see where we're at. And I'll go over that. Yeah, so here's the MicroDucts. So I just like to have a visual so it makes more sense what we're saying. So the micro technology, what they're made up of is called a microduct. And a microduct it's just a smaller pathway. It's a smaller pathway. It's made for fiber to be jetted through. We don't have time in this call to talk that or show it, but basically there's a machine, has these belts on it that come down, and it shoots the fiber air assisted with an air compressor through the pathways, and you'll install 5,000 feet of fiber in 15 minutes. So everyone on here, I'm assuming, is familiar with your 1.25 inch, 2 inch, 4 inch conduit. That's our bread and butter, and it's all made out of HDPE, high density polyethylene. Another word for it's plastic, and it comes on a reel, right? So you can get 5,000, 8,000 feet on a reel. It's made to be direct buried. The microducts are the exact same thing. They come on a reel. They're made to be direct buried. They can go 20 feet underground. You can put, concrete encase them. They're not going to crush them. They're made for that. They're just as thick as the standard conduit. Again, they're just smaller. They're made for fiber to be, jetted through. And they actually started in the mid 90s in Europe. And on the right there, you'll see there's different sizes that they come in.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two numbers. The first is always going to be the OD. The second is the ID. And it's all in millimeters, thanks to it's starting in Europe. I always say thanks to Siri and Alexa for the quick conversion if we need it. And then inside of there, they have these ribs. And what that does, it allows that air, when you're jetting the fiber through, to circulate that fiber cable and really just carry it through the pathway. And so if you'll hit the next slide. This is our Silicor ULF. Paul mentioned a little bit about this a couple minutes ago. This is a lining that comes inside of our pathways, our standard conduit and our MicroDucts I just talked about. And what that does is it lowers the coefficient of friction by 62%. So now you're able to jet that fiber 5 times further. So you're able to get those distances much different because of that. If I was in front of everyone, I'd have a sample with it and without it, and then you can really feel the difference. We invented this back in 1984. We have a patent on it. There's nothing out there like it. We also had another version in 2014 and our newest version almost 2 years ago that we came out with. And so we have a lot of data and a lot of things like that. I got a video that I did about a year ago to show just how big of a deal that the lining is when you're installing the cable. If you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Thank you. So this is our FuturePath. What this is going to be 2 or more MicroDucts under one sheath, and that outer sheath there, it gives it a little extra protection, but its main purpose is really to hold those MicroDucts there. These do come on a reel, and depending on what size MicroDucts you have, it could be anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 feet on a reel. And then we'll say like 2-way or 4-way or 7-way. And that just means, 4-way means 4 pathways, obviously. They're color coded, as you can see. And in between the pathways is a locate wire. And so it doesn't occupy any of the pathways. It comes in between the pathways. 20 gauge is our standard, but we do go down to a 14 gauge as well. And what I'll do is I kind of like to show this so people can understand kind of how that works. Is basically one thing to point out is, when you're installing your pathways, like I mentioned earlier, dig once, you have all your pathways on one reel, and if you're putting in 1 1/4 inch, now you can do in that same borehole, you can have 7 pathways, or even smaller boring hole or plow, maybe you have 4, right? And so you come in, you go handhole to handhole, and we have a sheet slitter here. Alex, get these from Alex, or we sell them through him. And you have this outer sheath here. You go into a handhole, and then basically you just cut this back. I like to do it 3 different ways, and basically banana peel the sheath back, and then you cut that outer sheath off, and then you basically have all your pathways kind of in there. And then you do the same thing with the pathways that are coming out of the handhole. And then, as I showed you earlier, you have this coupler, and you just couple these pathways just like this inside that handhole. And again, that's waterproof, airtight, nothing's going to get through there. You do that handhole to handhole, you can go up to 2,500 feet in between handholes if you need to. And then when you install that fiber, you're going to jet that much further distances. We say 5,000 feet on average, depends on elevation changes and how many 90s and things like that. But yeah, so again, they come in different configurations, and we can work with you on what's going to be right for you and what fiber capacity that you want today and the future, and just give you those options that you can choose from that's going to be the best for you.
So the 2 big things there is it gives you future proofing and scalability. That way, as you expand, you've got additional pathways. And then it gives an additional revenue recognition opportunity if you wanted to lease out one of those pathways to a particular customer. No, I think that's very compelling. So I know we just talked about MicroTrenching. I know we talked about FuturePath and MicroDucts. I'm trying to think just for myself from an environment perspective. Where are these usually deployed? Urban, suburban, rural areas? Do you see any particular trend on how these are being deployed currently?
Yeah, so they're really all of those. They're deploying in urban, suburban, or rural, and rural is really a no-brainer in my opinion. That's where we have the most success, and it's just really the scalability, like you mentioned, of the how fast you can deploy, and not just the pathways, but also the fiber itself. And there's quite a few different options there. One of the things are when you're building a network. There's a lot of different ways to do that, and there's a lot of different options. And we also have some different options that we do with various customers, especially when it comes to the rural, that we can go over with you and help with some of that design. Again, it's just about giving you options and then letting you, choose what you think or be aware of, what options you do have. And then, we have a lot of success in suburban areas as well, where a lot of times it's harder to explain on here, not really able to really show it. But when you're in a back going in maybe the rear of the houses, and you have say 10 houses back there, and you come out of that handhole to each one of those flower pots, you could put something like this 7-way, and then a lot of people do like a 7-way, and then excuse me, 3 singles, and then they come out of there and give a dedicated pathway to each one of those flower pots, and then come in when they sign up, put in the drop, and then you just have that fiber cable that you push all the way from that handhole all the way to the house. So it's used in really all of them, and we can kind of go over with you when we have more time, really the different options that you have.
Yeah, Ron, let me add a little bit to that. So
Yeah.
again, I've been around long enough that I've seen an evolution occurring, and the evolution has already occurred to people being made very aware of microtechnology, microconduit, microduct. But back in the day, those who were leading the charge in trying to build out broadband communities and struggled with a little bit of a lock hold from the tier ones on the communities, they were adventurous enough to put in multiple 2-inch conduits whenever they had it open. So even before dig once was a thing, they were throwing in multiple conduits, realizing number one, that they'd have the bandwidth for the future if they needed to put more fiber in. Number two, I'll take the particular case of Utah, which is probably one of the states that has the most deployed conduit and fiber throughout all its roads and elsewhere. They were in a mode of leasing or bartering, having people use their right-of-ways in their installations. And then there was initially a concern, is microtechnology robust enough? And that's all been proven now. So now the same people that are very interested in building out networks, and it always comes back to the business case, right? Interested in justifying the cost of deployment, regardless of the homes passed. They're looking at providing not only their own scalable bandwidth for the future, but also the ability to lease these lines. So it's really taken off almost anywhere where people's are building out a route along a highway, a route along a middle mile, interconnection where someone can realize that I know we'll probably get to this later on, for pennies on a dollar, they can have more capacity, and the optical fiber and cable, whether it's 250 micron or 200 micron, now has such high density, they can satisfy their needs in a much smaller size than they were before. So, and it's also much easier to deploy within a new conduit, a micro cable, than it is to deploy over an existing cable that's sitting in a bigger 3-inch, 4-inch conduit. So there's a lot of ease of installation, not just for the first install, but for the subsequent future installs.
So Paul, you're saying that MicroDuct technology or solutions really has the ability to support incremental fiber expansion without that customer incurring a major reinvestment cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the rule of thumb I always talk about is, and I think this is close to right, is about a 70% cost for digging up the hole for putting in the conduit. So that leads itself to the dig once concept. Ron could walk anybody who's interested in through the business case of a comparison of, let's say, over a 10-year period of time, putting in a 2-inch conduit with what you think is enough bandwidth, which never is, and then down the road digging up again and putting in another 2-inch conduit and repeating that process versus putting in a lot of FuturePath up front and having that extra capacity with all the major fiber cable providers now providing very, very high quality, super high density cables. So, you know, it's a no-brainer. You know, if we were to say this in 3 words, it gives you scalability, it gives you flexibility, and just gives you a really smart business case.
No, it's fantastic. So, Ron, what factors should our operators really consider when they're selecting conduit for these long-term network scalability projects?
Yeah, it kind of goes what we've been talking about. You know, we can't really predict the future. We don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately. But when it comes to the pathways, at least we can, you know, future-proof your network, right? And that's just what we talked about with adding. When you're putting in the pathway, you dig once, you put in all your pathways, allow yourself to have, you know, that flexibility to add fiber as you need it, and then as your network grows, you scale with it. As same time as, you know, we don't know what new technologies, you know, may come out in the future, and when they do, then, you know, you're able to adapt to them right away. And the other thing is kind of what I talked about with putting in the right pathway that has the capacity for not just the fiber today, but also the fiber that you may need in the future. So.
No, that's well said. So I'm just trying to think through this from an application perspective. So Paul, how would you think FuturePath or MicroDucts could support, let's say, like a Nokia technology? If you're looking GPON, XGS-PON, 25G, their migration to 50G, and even when 100G comes to the market, how do you kind of envision those various supports?
Yeah, so the one thing we're never short on is bandwidth demand. So that's the given, right? So when I explain to non-techies and non-telecom people, when they talk about why can't we just do wireless? Why can't we just do wireless? I have to explain, as we all know on this call, that wireless always has backhaul, and backhaul has to be high bandwidth, low latency for wireless to effectively work, unless it's point to point and other application spaces like that. So no matter what the demand is for higher and higher frequency or bandwidth wireless, you're going to have networks that are backed by a really strong and powerful direct connection, connecting the towers and such. And so that's one thing that I think that this provides that scalability for, as Ron said, either newer technology down the road or just simply more capacity. I heard a statistic the other day, a crazy one, that AI data centers, not only do they draw 10 times more power, I think that's right, than a regular data center, but they also require 4 or 5 times more bandwidth in the interconnection. Oh, I mean, if I'm wrong on those, at least I'm directionally correct, right? So there's a tremendous amount of, I'll do a lot of hand waving here, right? So there's a tremendous need going forward, not just for our current Broadcom and your focus on, you know, wireless build out, but just to support the bandwidth needed for everything we're doing with AI. I mean, I'm using it more and more myself every day. It's just amazing. Yeah. So data centers are popping up everywhere, and you've just got to have the flexibility to add much more than you originally thought in terms of your fiber needs.
Yeah, and I think we're just barely scratching the surface on AI requirements too. So the ability to future-proof yourself, I think, will absolutely come into play. So for me, and I know we talked about FuturePath, I know we talked a lot about MicroDucts. It always helps me to understand a business case or an application. Ron, can you share just a real-world example of how a customer leveraged your product to improve deployment efficiency?
Yeah, you know, excuse me, you know, when we were going over these questions and I actually put these together, I was really glad you had this one because one of the case studies that we have is actually, we did it about a year ago and I was actually a part of it. So it was for a company in Clarksdale, Mississippi called Uplink, and they used to be a WISP and they were gonna look to deploy fiber. And my counterpart at the time met the guy that owns, his name's Brian, at a trade show, and he set up a call for me to, educate him on the micro solution. And so we did that, and he's like, man, this is great. He's like, I want to do this, and so we had a couple other meetings with him and helped with some of the design and things like that. And he was about 2-3 months before he was going to, start his phase one, and he set a call up with my counterpart and I, and he said, hey guys, he's like, I've been talking to a lot of my peers and a lot of different engineers at these engineering firms, and they think I'm nuts, going with this. And he's like, am I missing anything here? And I just told him, I'm like, hey, it's because more than likely they aren't familiar with the solution, and if they are, they know maybe 30% of it, and I don't want that to come off wrong. In my old role, I've hundreds of meetings, and 100% of the time, that's what it was. Is they would hear about a little bit about it, they didn't know, and then I'd go through the presentation and really go through everything about the solution, and they came up to me 100% of the time after that, and we're like, oh, you know what, you're right, I didn't realize that. And so he's like, yeah, that's what I thought. He's like, because I see myself saving 30% on my bill. And so he went and did phase one, and then we went down there to meet with him, and I'm not gonna lie, I was excited that next day to hear, did he save 30%, or am I gonna be buried in Clarksdale? And so we joked around, beginning, and I said, so hey, did you save the 30%, or was I wrong? And he's like, no, this is great. He's like, we saved 30% easily, and that's 2 years ago, this part. And then I don't know what phase he's in now, because like I said, I changed different roles, but I know he's still using the micro and everything, and I was really happy with it. So I was able to save a lot of money, and he did a lot of rural and suburban, both. And I know when Alex sends out a follow-up email, he had said he's going to send that case study out to everyone. And there's also a video, an interview there that the guy Brian at Uplink does. And yeah, so Alex will share that with you at the end.
And again, no two applications are the same. So if you are looking to build out with BEAD, looking to build out with private equity, engage us, and we can sit down and have that one-on-one consultation to figure out what's the right conduit for you. So to kind of bring this full circle, when we started this, we initially talked about BEAD and what that meant to be BABA certified. Can you talk a little bit about that, Ron, in regards to BABA certification, where your product's manufactured, and maybe stocking or depot locations you have available?
Yeah, that's the easiest question you gave me today. So
I'm all about I'm teeing you up.
Yeah, so we are BABA certified. It's one thing that we're very proud of is our products, are made here in the U.S. All of our resin manufacturers that we get to make our conduit, they're all in the U.S. We have 15 plants throughout the United States, 2 R&D facilities, and again, it's not only bought in the U.S., but it's made in the U.S. And also, you can get on our website and you can see the documentation, or you can also get with Alex and he can get with us, and we can get that to you.
And Ron, one more thing I just want to interject. We've been doing this for over 50 years. So we have a little bit of experience. I mean, you'll see some Me Too's out there in the market, but honestly, we don't bash any competition. We just say that we've been doing this for 50 years. And so we really have a level of expertise and a level of customer service that is second to none.
So Paul, not quite the softball pitch that I gave Ron, but if you had to say, what are some of the best practices that would help service providers optimize deployment costs while maintaining their high performance? What would you say some of those would be?
Simple ones. I'm probably going to forget more than I mentioned, but the simple ones would be planning right away permitting as early as possible, and trying to make sure you get ahead of the curve there. I know as I go back to the first question you asked me, people looking to streamline all the overhead, so to speak, on getting the permits done. I'm not an expert in this area, but I know in some cases for implementing BEAD funding, you have to have all your contractors lined up and all your I's dotted and T's crossed to make that happen. So some of that may go away. Hopefully it goes away in time for people to do it. So hopefully things become more streamlined and permitting goes a little easier. Line up your contractors, plan on your right-of-way deployments so you can leverage lots and lots of FuturePath of the appropriate size by consulting with experts like Ron. And then also, let's not ignore, and hopefully we get to this before we end, let's not ignore other value-added business case applications that could help drive your ability to provide more than your original business case would allow. So think about other opportunities to monetize. And if you could do that in such a way that you get have your cake and eat it too, you get your bandwidth, plus you have your future capabilities for something else that's exciting, then that's great. And Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you because I'm sure I forgot at least 4 or 5 good ones. Did I?
No, you were good. That was perfect.
Okay, well, good. It's rare that I'm perfect.
And there's a lot of things, just to kind of add on to this a little bit, that we can do to help you at Winncom. We have the ability to offer pre-engineering services through our in-house partner. That same partner has the ability to do PE stamp drawings. If you do not have an expertise in installation with conduit or fiber, we do maintain a partner network, regionally and nationally based. So we could bring you into fold with one of those partners. And again, those relationships are good from really 2 different perspectives. One, it gives a fiber installation company, which are part of the BEAD reimbursable process. And the second, a lot of customers use that as a training process. They partner their internal teams with these partners, and not the first, not the second, but maybe the third deployment, you've got a better understanding of the equipment, the skill set, and the stakeholders required to put in these conduit and fiber networks. So again, engage us quickly, engage us early in the process, and we've got a program here that would help you. So Paul, I know you talked about permitting and right-of-way approvals, but can you just briefly talk about how does fiber conduit selection impact that, and in particular for projected timelines?
Yeah, I mean, the simple ones are, I mean, the most obvious glaring one is that as you move forward with other implementations in your network, if you already have embedded or you plan on embedding a micro technology FuturePath conduit network, then you're seamlessly going to be able to upgrade and deploy and move things around in a very cost-effective manner. I think I mean, the choice of conduit, unless Ron corrects me here, whether it's 2-inch or FuturePath, you're still at whatever level they exist, going to have to go through the labor shortage issues, going to have to go through the permitting issues. But once you get through that and you have your treasured network that you build out, don't limit yourself. Put yourself in a position that you won't have to go through that again. And so you're able to, I mean, turn it into a monetizable, leasable right away. That's extremely powerful.
No, that's a great point. Absolutely great point.
Okay. What did you want to ask me about this one?
So can you walk us through your smart infrastructure and fiber optic sensing?
Sure. So this is, I'm sure, brand new to 99.5% of your audience, but this is something that really gets me excited. So Dura-Line started with the micro technology, and we've talked about the scalability, flexibility, and all the reasons to put in micro technology. What people are not aware of, and you're welcome to reach out and talk about it offline, we don't have enough time to get into depth here, is that fiber that's currently being used for bandwidth and only being installed for bandwidth and reducing the digital divide can be used for something that's entirely different by deploying slightly different electronics on the exact same fiber, whether it be one dark fiber of an entire bundle of hundreds or thousands, or whether it be down the road just on a DWDM channel that's on a network. You can actually use it for monitoring traffic and speed on roads. You can use it for damage prevention. You can correlate it with your statewide 811 system. So if you have a right-of-way or a backhaul situation where you are potentially going to have damage, or you're near an asset that would benefit from using the fiber for what I call situational awareness, providing information anywhere near the right-of-way for hundreds of kilometers or 60, 70, passably miles in one direction, then the same fiber can be used for that purpose. What you're looking at here is you're looking at Dura-Line thought leadership and innovation with the Fiber Optic Sensing Association, which we're a founding member of, and which I chaired the past couple of years. We submitted a project with a couple system technology providers with the Utah Department of Transportation. They had fiber cables that were 15 years old, buried along their ski resort, avalanche ridden roads in the middle of the mountains. And they said, can we use the fiber for more than just bandwidth? Can we use it to monitor avalanches, traffic congestion? And they can. So again, we don't have time to get into it here, but another way for your folks that you work with who are backhauling their wireless anyway to use their right-of-way and their Dura-Line conduit is to use it for an entirely different purpose using distributed fiber optic sensing. So this is just one application. This is roadside monitoring. If you give me one fiber near a multi-lane road and it's situated in the proper location, I can give you traffic and speed of the tires and the cars moving in each direction just by using special electronics on the fiber. So that it's extremely exciting, it's monetizable, and it provides much more value add to anyone who happens to own the right of way.
And I would add on to that by saying, if this sounds like something that could benefit you, again, contact information, we have that on the last slide. Reach out and we'll set up that one-on-one consultation. But we're looking to try to provide or encourage any additional revenue recognition opportunity that can be available to you. So I think this is a fantastic technology that's been really time proven and can help bolster some of the revenue for some of your applications. So I know we're coming down to the last couple of minutes. I'll open this question to the group. So for our customers on the line, what are some key takeaways that service providers should focus on when they're planning their next fiber deployment?
Yeah, I'll jump on that. First, just want to say thanks for joining us, today, and hopefully, you're able to learn something, hopefully a couple things. And the thing is, the truth is that those of you that are on here, none of you had time to be on here, and you probably have, full red email, and probably 2 that hit you that you have to get done, and you still joined us. So just hoping this is worth your time and you guys got something out of it and learned some things, and we really appreciate it. Just want you to know, hey, there's other options out there. What we'd like to do is, sit down, talk about, hey, what does your build look like today? Or maybe you're going to build a network in the future, and what does that look like? And then today we gave you really just a highlight of what the solution is. So we can go in more depth with you on that. And again, like I mentioned a couple of different times, is just give you some options for your builds. There's a lot of different ways to do it. We've worked with a lot of people throughout the US doing these builds. And so in each of them, there's different ways that some of them do that we can, show you those, what's worked for them and help them, for that cost per pass. So yeah, just like to sit down, talk what you do now and kind of give you some options. So thanks again for joining.
I'll add to that. So Dura-Line prides itself on being super customer friendly. Again, whether it's the Dura-Line Academy where you can get your own training, or super knowledgeable people like Ron and a whole application engineering staff, we love a challenge. We've got great products that work in normal situations, but we'd like to hear what your pain points are. We'd like to hear what it is that you need uniquely. And we pride ourselves in sitting down across the table and working that out with you. So and I also want to thank you, Alex, and the Winncom team for inviting myself on this. Appreciate it, and hopefully we provided some value for you today.
No, I think this was very informative. And I'll conclude by saying we're going to send out an email, and that email is going to have a couple things on it. It'll have a link to this video. That way, if you want to go back and reference a certain portion of this, you have that ability. We're also going to include that case study that Paul was referencing. Now, in addition to that, we'll include the education of how do you register for Dura-Line's workforce educational seminars. So we'll provide that information there as well, along with a link to this slide here. Now, this is constantly updated. This is our BEAD portal, free to join. It's got all the different panel discussions, and we do about 3 or 4 of these a month. So if you want to hear about latest and greatest in BEAD, what your state's doing, if you want to hear about Nokia's new solution, or OSP fiber and what options are available to you, or fixed wireless, fantastic resource. You can also go through the state funding overview to figure out what exactly is going on in your state. When is your state moving to pre-qualification? When are you moving to application wave 1, wave 2? What are your designated project areas? How do you determine your BSLs or community anchor locations? All that is there at your fingertips. And again, our goal here at Winncom is to make this process as simple and easily as possible. So reach out to us and we can set up a one-on-one consultation. Best way to reach out is either BEAD@winncom.com or acernic@winncom.com. And again, we're going to give you access to our BEAD portal, our fiber solution page, along with a lot of great additional information. And the last thing I'll mention is we will be at WISPA America. This coming March, 24th to the 27th. We're doing a BEAD roadshow. And what we're looking to accomplish is showcasing the eco center depth and breadth of what our customers are deploying for BEAD. In urban areas and suburban areas, they're doing fiber. And we'll talk about Nokia and their XGS PRON product for OLTs and ONTs. We'll talk about OSP fiber and the corresponding conduit that supports these applications. We'll talk about middle mile, in particular licensed microwave, millimeter wave, and how that's being serviced with last mile CBRS through Toronto Wireless or 28 gig through Intercom Telecom. But again, the goal here is to empower you with what products are certified, which ones fall under the waiver wire exemptions, and our goal at Winncom is to help you from a product selection, from a certification, to grant writing, to professional engineering services, to customer implementation through fiber contractors. Again, we've got a program here that can help. So thank you again for joining us for our Winncom panel. To our guests at Dura-Line, Paul, Ron, thank you again. I think this was fantastically informative. And again, I'll say, if you're thinking about putting this in, reach out and we can set up a call to review. Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you on the next panel discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alex.
Thank you, guys.